Alright guys, so we're going to get started today changing out the master cylinder and changing all these brake lines. I'll give you a peek in here. So because this car was full drum brakes and it's a 66, it's still got the old single pot master cylinder and there's a single line coming out of it, and then it goes down to a T fitting on the frame. So we're going to pull the line off here. We'll pull the line out of the T because we're actually going to get rid of the T and everything because we're putting discs on the front. We're going to go to a dual circuit master cylinder set up for drums and discs. This is a brand new unit for a 78 Thunderbird. I'm sure it fits a million other things, but that's how I ordered this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the whole line out. I've got a proportioning valve, and we're gonna run new lines to it. We'll have to mount it. I gotta look down on the frame when we go to pull the T-fitting out, and we'll see if we can use that or not. But anyway, let's get started on this. Okay, there's our old single master. There's our dual. What we're going to do now is we're going to try and hang the proportioning valve where we mount the master cylinder up under the hood there. And I had a look, and it looks like if I take the proportioning valve and hang it at an angle kind of like that, if you can see that, I can get enough room to do these lines and to clear everything without any heat issues. So we're going to get started by making the bracket for it. And I picked up some just aluminum angle. It's not very heavy, but I don't think it really needs to be. It's not like it's going to carry much weight. We're going to try and make it nice, but once again, I'm not a great fabricator. So got a centering punch. It leaves a nice dimple. Drill. Now these are 3/8 bolts that mount this. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill 25/64. So like 1/64 oversized, just so we got a little bit of movement here. I don't have a vise, so this is how I'm going to do it. But I don't want to drill through the table, so I'm just going to lift the end of this up. So we know how we want to mount this now. We got to figure out our length. Now, I'd like to hang it with the 2 bolts, but I think I'm only going to be able to do 1. So we don't have to make it very long. Just like that. So we'll take the grinder and we'll switch the disc. Cut off wheel. Going to get rid of some of these sharp corners, but we don't want to get rid of our structural integrity. Okay, so what we got going now. We just got the corners slimmed up a little bit. We'll take the buffing wheel and we'll clean them up nice. Right. So we end up with a decent little piece of aluminum. So we're just gonna bolt this on here for now. It's just a random bolt, just so we can get it figured out to mount. Then we can start figuring out lines on it too. So I just want to snug this bolt in here, just like that. So I actually want to just take my marker and kind of outline where this bolt is going to be. And you can kind of see that's the outline of this. So then what we want to do is get the center of that, and I'm going to offset it a little bit so I make sure I have room for my bolt head. And then we're just going to, this is an automatic center punch, just like that. And you can see that little center punch leaves a little divot, does a beautiful job, makes it really easy. Alright guys, so you can see a little 5/16 hole, but it's got a little bit of burr here, so I'm just going to clean it up a little bit with my buffing wheel. Just like that. So now we have a bracket that's going to tuck down beneath the master cylinder. Alright, I just dug through my bolt bin, which is literally a bin full of bolts. No organization to it at all. Just going to tighten this up. I'm just going to get that to about where we want it. Look at that, guys. Proportioning valve on the side of our master cylinder. And I'm just going to tuck this back in on the car. And we'll get a rough idea, make sure it's clear. So, it looks like, I've got that bolt in there still, but it looks like we got plenty of room around everything. So that'll be a good place for that. Okay, so one of the things I'm fighting on this master cylinder and brake setup is brake line size. So the factory lines were 3/16 lines all the way to the back and to the front end. And that's okay, because that's what my proportioning valve is. But I'm replacing the front brake hoses with ones that'll fit the calipers. So to do that, they need a 1/4 inch line. So I went over to my local Napa, because those guys are great to deal with, and I picked up an adapter. Male 1/4 inch inverted flare to female 3/16. So I can take my 3/16 brake line, just like this one here. And now I got 3/16 there, a 1/4 inch, and it'll thread right into my proportioning valve, no problem. That's the easy part. The line to the rear is still 3/16, so all I need is an inline union, just like this one. And as you can see, 3/16 inverted flare on both sides. Female on both ends, no problem. Screw that in. Hook it up to my brake line underneath. Boom, Bob's your uncle. No problem there. So, that means everything out of the proportioning valve to the brakes, no problem. The other thing for the rear brake lines is I need a residual check valve. This is a 10-pound residual check valve, and it goes after the proportioning valve on the rear brake line. And what this does is keeps 10 pounds of pressure in the rear to keep the shoes partially out. So it always has 10 psi in the lines. That's enough to keep your shoes almost touching the drum, but not enough to slow you down. So when you step on the brakes, it'll overpower this. It'll put whatever pressure and flow you have coming from your proportioning valve through this to the back. When you let off the brakes, it'll let all the pressure come back except for 10 psi, which keeps the shoes from returning all the way, and that keeps quick brake reaction times. So this we can put right in line in place of our union. It's got female 3/16 adapters in both ends that came with it. No problem there. We'll just put that down where the line comes up, and then we'll just put a line from there up to here for rear out. And then we have 2 front circuits out. This will go 1 to each side of the car for your front brakes. Now the tough part is going to be coming from the master cylinder to the proportioning valve. The larger capacity at the front is for your front brakes, so it needs to come from there to here. And this one's for your rear brakes, it needs to go from here to here. Doesn't look like a big deal. Well, this is 5/16, this is 3/16. This is 3/8, this is 3/16. So we're gonna have to do some fancy adapters to make this stuff work. We know where things need to go, now we just need to make them fit. So we got a couple ways we can do the adapting. We can just put a 5/16 line, and then I've got some adapters here down to 3/16 with a couple 90s. And what that'll do is it'll allow us to come out of there with a short one, and then come out of here with another short guy into our rear. Only thing about that is it's not going to be pretty. And I know it doesn't really matter how it looks in the big scheme of things. I would like it to look nice. So it's Sunday now. Tomorrow's holiday Monday for Canadian Thanksgiving. So I have to wait until Tuesday now to get adapters to make this go to here. And I don't want to put this on the car because it's so tough to get in here. I'd like to plumb this part with this off. I stopped at work and I grabbed all the brake bending tools to bend the brake lines. I got a couple different style ones here for different size line. This is for the big guy. Not that we're going to need this. This is more for like a 3/8 or bigger fuel line. So I just wanted to bring it just in case. This is probably going to be what we're going to be using. This is a Blue Point one. And it's got your angles and everything on here. So it'll work pretty nice. And then I went to grab the flaring tool set from work. And guess what? Wasn't one there. So I went down to Canadian Tire. Spent 43 bucks. Bought myself one. I need one anyway, so it's not a big deal. The next thing we can do is we can start figuring out the brake lines. I gotta run a whole new brake line for the driver's side front brake. This one here used to go up to the master cylinder and down to the T fitting, kind of like that. Then the rear brake's threaded into this side, the right front brake threaded in there, and this was your left front brake. And as you can see, if you remember from part one, both these brake lines, the line was seized inside the nut. So they actually both broke. Wasn't too concerned about it because I wanted to go through the brake lines anyway and change what I had to. We're going to cut back the passenger side, the right front. We're going to cut that line back a little bit and we'll flare it and put a new nut on it, and then we can use one of these unions. I've got brand new rubber lines that go from the chassis to the caliper. I've already hung the passenger side, or the driver's side, sorry. So as you can see under here, I hung this rubber line in. I've got my 3/16 to 1/4 inch adapter like I showed earlier, threaded in there. So now I just got to do a 3/16 steel line from there all the way up and over. This is our 3/16 line to the rear of the car. So that'd be your rear drum brakes. So like I said, we'll put that check valve in line, and then we'll run that up to the proportioning valve. And then this is your passenger side front brake line. And I've already threaded on a female adapter on it. And we can run that right up to the proportioning valve from there. So really all this isn't going to be very tough. I would kind of like to maybe put a P-clamp on this, one of those rubber P-clamps, just so it stays in position, just keep stuff from moving around. But that won't be a big deal. Okay, so it's been, I don't know, 4, 5 weeks since I filmed starting working on the brake system on the Galaxie, part 1. So like I said, it's been 4 or 5 weeks. It's now the middle of November. Well, not quite the middle of November, it's November 8th. And of course, last night we had our first real snowstorm. That is probably gonna stay. It has snowed once already, but the snow only lasted about a week. I have a feeling it's gonna last a little longer this time. Just a couple inches, but the temperature did drop down to about -15 Celsius today, so whatever that is in Fahrenheit. I don't know, I'd have to do the math. So, as you can see, the garage is now a little packed because winter's here. Got the tractor here. A couple of the Sea-Doos, and of course some outdoor furniture stuff. Seat out of the truck, lawnmower, weed whacker. Way back here, I got my table I'm working on the brake system with. We got the other two Sea-Doos in here. I did do a little work off camera already on the car, and I'll give you a peek at that. So as you can see, I started building the lines over to the proportioning valve. I've got 2 out of 3 here. I did put some curly cues in them, just in case there's some flex. It'll help keep the lines from breaking or anything. I'll have to strap some stuff and get some stuff cleaned up here. You can see I've got the proportion, or the residual check valve there. You can see I've connected the rear brakes. I've connected to the other side front brake up here. Don't know how well you'll be able to see in there, but and I've only got the line for the driver's side brakes here, going from here up to that proportioning valve. Grabbed an actual tubing cutter from work. Another stick here. And I got adapters here that go from that 3/16 brake line to the proper size threads to go into the master cylinder, so I'm not using an ugly conglomeration of fittings here. We'll have to go from the rear to the front, and from the front of the proportioning valve to the rear of the master cylinder. I did have one that I kind of made up already, but thinking I'd have to get an adapter. So that was kind of what I had planned there. So we're going to try and basically imitate this with the proper sized end. I don't have enough line left here to get the nut and to put a new crimp on it, but I might be able to use this chunk of line to do the second one. We'll see. Go up there, and we start another bend. We start it here and follow the curve at just past 90 degrees. See where that puts us here. I think that'll work, guys. Just see some stuff here. We actually have to put a bend straight down from there. So that put us a little more yet. That'll work. Alright, let's cut it and put the fitting on. Not as quick as cutting them with the grinder, but it does a much nicer job. Straighter end, less slag on the end of it. So then, cleaner for the end here. Just make sure you get the chunks out. Ooh, before we get ahead of ourselves, remember the nut. Always, always, always remember the nut, because you will forget it. Height is pretty good there on that. You want it to match this lower lip here. Try and get this fairly straight here when I start doing my flare. Perfect. That's your first flare. Kind of bubbles it in a little bit. Loosen that. All right. There is your double flare. Gotta be in there. There we go. Look at that. That will definitely work. I'm going tight with it. I'm not going stupid tight, but I'm definitely going tight with it. So, because I don't want any leaks, because it is a brake system. There, one line down. Doesn't look bad. We'll see how it looks in the car. There should be enough clearance in there. All right, number 2 here. Let's see if we can't use this old chunk here. I want to come around the outside of the first one like that. And I don't want them to touch. I want them to be close, but I don't want them touching. Because if they're going to touch, it's going to cause issues with rubbing. When you're bending it without using the actual bender, you be careful you don't kink it. I'm just going to cut this right here. It's going to work. We'll have to do some last tweaking right before we get it on there, but not first. Well, just as a little update, young Steven got married last weekend. He's now a married man, and I feel sorry for his poor wife. All right, it's in there. As you can see, like I said, I want it to come around. And I left lots of clearance here. Like, people who have any experience at all building whole systems, and people who have any amount of finesse, because I have none, I'm sure I would have done a much nicer job with that. Let's be honest, it's going on a 54-year-old car that's half rotten and owned by me, so. And the nice thing about things like this is, guys, you don't have to get it perfect the first time. You have to get it good enough to work, good enough to be safe. But it doesn't have to look perfect, because you can always fix little things later. As you gain more skill, as you learn things, it'll be a lot easier to make it all look like a professional job. And I want you to remember, when you're watching all these awesome guys on YouTube, these amazing builders and fabricators, if you're watching stuff like the Skid Factory or Nugget Garage, those guys have 20, 30 years of experience doing this stuff. And the more you do it, the better you get. And the more you do it, the more ideas you get. So if you're trying to compare yourself to them, like, it's an awesome benchmark to look up to these guys, but you don't have to be as good as them the first time, or even the second time, or the third time. Do the best you can with the tools, the money, the materials, and the time you have. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are in my boat when you're watching all these shows and these things that you look up to, like the incredible skill, the high dollar tools, like even guys putting engines together and doing engine swaps. That's something everyone can do. Like, it's depending on what you're doing. Some of it takes a lot more skill than others, but it's the dollar value that really kills the little guy trying to do that stuff. Like, even an ECM is 2,500 bucks Canadian just for an ECM with a harness. Like, in the big scheme of things, that's not a ton of money, but it is when that's only one little piece. Like, even the Holley Terminator, if I want a Holley Terminator to run my LS and my Corvette, it's $1,000 US. That's awesome. $1,000 US up here is close to 1,500 by the time you add shipping and the dollar exchange. I think the dollar exchange, $1,000 US is like 1,350 bucks. And that's the shits living in Canada. Like shipping and coming across the border and brokerage fees, it kills. Like if I lived anywhere in the lower 48, most of that stuff's free shipping overnight. Me, it's a week and like $150 shipping, depending on the claimed price of the thing coming across the border. Like I bought a $1,000 programmer for a motorbike once, and I paid another $480 brokerage at the border. So when you're seeing me using all this used stuff and cheap stuff, like there's a reason for it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a show car. It doesn't have to be. But anyway, I digress. That's enough of my ranting. Let's go mount this up and get our last brake line made. Sorry about the noise in the background. That's just the furnace. So I put a couple initial bends in this line kind of to get what we need figured out here. And we'll start putting some more in it. Okay, so that's in there. Not the prettiest setup in the world. And once I get everything down up to the proportioning valve, I'll have to make sure that I get all the lines so they're not touching. Like I said earlier, I want to try and put a clamp on this one to the steering box bolt, so it keeps everything from rubbing here. I've got this line marked here so I can cut it. One more thing I forgot to mention before. When you're making these lines, make sure you leave enough room before the bend to get the nut and the crimper in place, or else it can really bite you. Even if that means you have to wait to do your last bend, that's okay. I'm not going to put the extra loop in this line. I'm hoping it won't be a problem. I probably didn't even need it in the other ones, but I worked on a lot of old vehicles. You always used to see that in. You don't really see it on new vehicles. So it was probably just a whole bunch of wasted time and wasted line putting them in, but in the big scheme of things, it doesn't really matter much. So. One thing I forgot to mention, anyone who's never built brake lines and doesn't know anything about them, you have to double flare. But like domestic brake lines or any of this domestic stuff you're building, it's always a double flare. If you single flare it, it won't seal. It's actually illegal on a brake system. So just as a heads up, if you're doing like a fuel system and stuff, oh yeah, you can single flare as long as it'll handle your pressures. So when you do this, I'm a little crooked there. You gotta be careful you don't go crooked, or else you'll actually break the center out of the tool. You want to go till the tool just bottoms out here. I don't know how well you can see that, but it bottoms out in there. Loosen it off. Take that out. Once again, there's your initial part of your double flare. If I was just going to do a single flare, I wouldn't have used that adapter first. I'd have just went straight to the tool. But I've never really done single flares very often. Even doing fuel systems for like a push-on hose, I usually still double flare, just out of habit. But if I would have been double flare or single flaring that, I would have just went straight with this. I wouldn't have used these adapters. And these adapters come in different sizes for different tube size. Like this was a 3/16. This one's a 1/2 inch. They're labeled on them. Once again, double flare. I'll pull my bolt out of here and I'll get it mounted on there. I'm hoping that this will be the last time I have to put this on here. I've actually had it on here 3 or 4 times. All right, now we're tight. So we can start hooking up brake lines. Okay, so we're going to pull the master cylinder back out again. There's just not quite enough room in there for me to get a good grip on to get everything done up. So we'll try and do the lines up first and then put it all in and then hook up the bottoms of the lines. Alright, let's get these lines in here first. Oh, that's so much easier. Perfect. These lines I can tweak a little to make sure they stay clear. Same with these plug wires, I can just pop them out of their retainer here. Just put them a little tighter. Genuine motorcraft. There, look, lots of clearance now. Get the lower parts of these lines hooked up now. Wasn't really enough room for the camera in here, but as you can see, all the lines are connected in here now. They're all connected there. Everything, nothing's rubbing right now. Once I get stuff clamped, should be good. In here, see they're all connected. See, everything has clearance on the power steering lines. So for an initial start and without having everything strapped perfectly, I think it's looking pretty good. So now we'll just go over to the other side and we'll make an attempt at fixing that broken brake line. Here's that last line. We'll just cut broken end off here. I got a nice little tubing cutter here. Might just have to cut just a little bit more off to get rid of this bend. Once again, just another 1/4 inch chunk cut off. Make sure our nut goes on. All this undercoating all over everything doesn't help. Another thing to do is always double check your fitting is the right thread, because sometimes you can buy a pack and have a wrong one in there. So we'll get fitting on. Just got to straighten a little bend here. Try that. Oh yeah, got to get it on far enough I can get it past my tool here. Okay, sorry about nothing but the back of my head. It's real confined space. I've actually got the camera sitting on the wheel of the tractor. And my back leaning against the wheel of the tractor. It tells you how tight I have this place packed to try and keep everything inside. Simple as that. A little bit of a confined space, a little bit more difficult, but big scheme of things, not too bad. Once I get this tight, I'm gonna just push the line back so it's not rubbing on the inside of the frame, back in here. So if I just take a little bit of that line, push it back, now I have a nice gap all the way through. So there we go. I'll have to undo these lines and pull the rubbers out when I get the calipers so I can thread the line into the caliper. But I know everything fits. Everything's the right length now. So we got the brakes all plumbed. Unless one of the original brake lines to the rear brakes blows, or the one over to the passenger side, the brakes are good. As soon as I get calipers and that caliper mount, I've already got brand new pads for them. So as soon as I get the calipers and the caliper mount, brakes should be done, hopefully. I gotta do tie rod ends on it yet. I have the tie rod ends. Those will be in the next episode, probably, maybe 2 episodes from now. I'm gonna leave the factory ones in there until I get wheels on it, and then I'm gonna take it to work and put it on the hoist at work, so that I can kind of keep the wheels aligned close to how they are, or get it as close as I can, Stephen and I. I'm waiting for spindle nut kits. Those nut and washer kits are back ordered. 3 weeks ago I checked in on them, like I went to order them, and I was told by one place they couldn't get them, and the other place told me middle of November. So I went back in there last week and I'm hoping to have those tomorrow or Tuesday. Same with one of the 2 calipers, should be in tomorrow. The second one is back ordered. I haven't heard when I'm going to see it, hopefully fairly quick. Because I need to make room in the garage because I need to get the wife's BMW in here, and Steven and I are going to try and change the fenders and hood on it. So I'm just going to put front end on it and get it so it's drivable and safe. And I think I'm just going to drive it. Saves me driving that service truck because that thing's horrible on fuel and not nice to drive, especially in the winter. So yeah, anyway, that's the end of the brake lines, master cylinder proportioning valve. It's just a matter of a couple little pieces and she'll be back on her wheels here. And then after we get it done, get the BMW done, we'll either start working on the transmission and stuff on this, or we might bring the Corvette in, pull the engine out of the Corvette, finish up the steering, and then one of the guys, I got a guy that's been on me for a couple years to do some work on a Chevelle. So he's got a 64 Chevelle with a straight 6 and a power glide. He wants my 6-liter out of my Corvette. So I'm making a deal with him. Sounds like he's going to buy that engine and I'm going to get it in his car for him and get it running. But we're kind of playing that by ear for now. Main thing is getting the Galaxie done and then getting the BMW done. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now, guys. Sorry about the long-winded ramble. If you like any part of this video, let me know. Comment on it. If there's parts about it you don't like, comment about it. Like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. So anyway, thanks for watching.